Right, good afternoon, Ghana, and you're welcome to the show. So today we're definitely discussing what has been presented by the finance minister yesterday, the state of the economy, what we intend to do, some of the measures that's been taken or has been given to us and as indications of government going to take to restore the economy or, rake in some revenues to support government businesses. These measures, are they real? Are they too simplistic? Are they, austerity enough to save the country from the brink of collapse? We'll be having a discussion with the former finance minister, Seth Terkper, shortly. And then also later on, ECOWAS meeting that's been held, the extraordinary meeting that's happening in Ghana. We will also cross over when it starts and bring you some excerpts or details of what's going on there, and you have an idea of what these leaders are discussing as far as the African continent is concerned. Let's go for a break. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back to Good Afternoon, Ghana. So I've earlier on stated that we are going through the analysis of what was presented by Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta yesterday. It's a lot, and all institutions and stakeholders are giving their opinions and what they think of what has been presented by the Finance Minister. Are they realistic and strong enough to bring the economy back onto a strong position? Let's do some slides, and I'll take you through a few of the things that's going on or that has been said as far as the finance minister is concerned. I start off with the expenditure cutting measures. So it says that discretionary spending to be cut by 10%. Discretionary spending to be cut by 10%. Cut fuel coupons allocation to political appointees by 50% effective 1st April 2022. Complete moratorium on purchase of imported vehicles meant to reduce vehicle purchase by public sector by at least 50%. So government vehicles that are being purchased, of course, reduced by 50%. Moratorium on all foreign travels except pre-approved and critical statutory travels. So before any minister will travel, it has to be pre-approved, it has to be statutory, it has to be critical, or you will not get that chance to travel. And that is if you're doing it on government purse, actually. Also, government will conclude ongoing measures to eliminate ghost workers from the government payroll by end December 2022. Conclude the renegotiation of the energy sector IPP's capacity charges by end of Q3 2022. Reduce excess capacity payments by 20% to generate total savings of 1.5 billion Ghana cedis. Also, to impose moratorium on establishment of new public sector institutions by end April 2022. Priorities ongoing public sector projects are over new projects. Reduce expenditure on all meetings and conferences by 50%. And then we also have cabinets approved that ministers at the heads of SOEs as SOEs to contribute 30% of their salaries from April to December 2022. The next 3 months, government has decided to reduce margins in the petroleum price build-up by a total of 15 pesos per litre with effects from 1st April. So the details are as follows. So the margin reduction, boss margin reduced by 2 pesos per litre. Unified Petroleum Pricing Fund margin reduced by 9 pesos per litre. Fuel marking margin also reduced by 1 pesos per litre. And then primary distribution margin reduced by 3 pesos per liter. Begin the implementation and collection of the revised property rate by end of April 2022. Implement the e-VAT, e-commerce or e-gaming activities or initiatives by end of April 2022. If you remember the e-gaming activities, government actually, indicated in the budgets. The last budget I read, I was going to task e-gaming activities. Impress upon Parliament to fast-track the passage of e-levy bill, tax exemption bill, and fees and charges bill. And begin the implementation and collection of the revised property rate by end of April 2022. Implementation of e-VAT, e-commerce. Oh, okay, I read this, and I read that as well. So if we can have the next one. Oh, that's it, maybe. All right, now let's go on to Zoom and speak with the former Finance Minister, Seth Terkper, to get his opinions on what has been presented by the Finance Minister yesterday. Mr. Seth Terkper, thank you so much for your time. You're welcome to Good Afternoon, Ghana.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to your viewers and to your listeners. Right. And I hope you can hear me clear.
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you clearly. So, first, give me a summary of what was presented by the Finance Minister, what your opinion has been since yesterday. What do you think?
Thank you very much. I think the way to begin is, what are we aiming to address? We are aiming to address a budget, and let me just point to 5 elements of it. Revenue, which is the money we are expecting to finance the budget. We are told by Bank of Ghana in the MPC statement that was issued recently that the revenue fell short. I think we collected at 67 or 69 billion against an expectation that we're going to collect 72. And even in the 2020 budgets, a probable actual was 70. So it means that we could not even meet that target. So we are going into a year, next year, or this year, which is the 2022 budget, where we are expecting to collect 100 billion, 100.5 billion. If all you can master and do last year was 67 or 69 billion, let's take it to be even 70 billion. And you are looking to collect 30 billion more, which is about half of what you were able to collect, last year. Is this feasible? You would agree with me that this is a tall order, especially when you could not even meet that target. On the other hand, your expenditure is also going up significantly. That's the second point. There's been no reduction. And therefore, what you are facing is a huge deficit, which is, if you deduct 137 or so of expenditure minus, 100, you have 37, which is exactly what GRA is supposed to be collecting in order that you could cure that deficit. So you see the ambitious nature of the budget that is even facing us. Now, on financing, we could not go to the markets. In fact, the markets were close to us. The external markets were close to us last year because we had said we would do 5 billion. We were able to do 3 billion, including a zero coupon bond. You remember that bond, which was very, very expensive. We have not been looking at it in terms of the likely interest rate or the interest rate that Ghana is to pay. The face value for that bond was to be 500 million US dollars plus. In exchange, we received, or that is what we are supposed to be paying in 2025, not far from now. Then we received in exchange only 350 million. So if you want to know the cost of that bond, just deduct 350 from 500, that is 150. And if you divide it by either the 350 or 500, the interest rate is about 30% for a foreign bond. So that is again, the situation that faces whatever we said about that bond. And then we couldn't go into the market for the additional 2 billion. In the media brief, and I'll come to that, the minister said, he had a term sheet or making arrangements to get 2 billion. Our deficit, which we have to finance, everything being equal, is over 30 billion. And so if you divide that, it's about, let's see, sorry, I drew a blank. The deficit that we have to finance, which we were looking at, yes, okay, about 37 or so billion.
Yes.
Which includes, the financing includes the SDR that we got, the money, Ghana's capital appreciation that we got from the IMF, part of which went into the budget, did not come in as revenue. It went to do the financing. So even your 37 billion, and if you added arrears, it's about 40 billion. It's what we have to finance Ghana cedis. If you divide it by an average exchange rate of, let's say, even 7, where we are likely to be, then you are getting something in the order of 2 points, something billion, which must be financed, close to 3 billion. So is it 2 billion that we are talking about as likely to secure? Is it just for a quarter financing? Is it for the whole year? So having given this background, you can see that much of what the minister, said, and some of which I call the tail end of it, you were enumerating, may not necessarily be the solution, to the problem. Let me pick e-levy, which is supposed to go back, to Parliament, which is the flagship. All that I have said, the 100 billion that we're supposed to be collecting, includes the e-billion of about 7 billion. So to the extent that it has not been passed, then it may worsen the situation. But it is not any revenue that's going to alleviate the borrowing, right? It's not going to alleviate the borrowing at all. It's already in it. And going forward for the next 3 years, there are estimates in the mid-term projection that includes that e-levy already. So they are not going to be additional to the projection, even for the medium term. It's about 8 billion next year, rises to about 9 billion or so, or 8 point something, and then it ends at about 10 billion. So it's already part of it. It is no new thing. We spoke about exemptions. Yes, that has been stalling for a long time, since 2015, 2016, when the draft was done. So if Parliament is going to review that, that might provide some relief. But a significant number of exemptions that we get, which often we do not appreciate, is that there are exemptions that are associated with loans that we take, external loans. And when those loans are used to import materials for the projects, because we do not produce everything in Ghana as a developing country or a lower middle income country, when those things are imported, by our laws, duty should be paid on them. So what it means is that many of those exemptions, if you were to say should be taxed, means that government has to make provision for the payment of the tax. So what is going to come in as revenue will go out as expenditure, so zero. Having said that, there are areas of abuse, areas, which are excessive, which can bring in some income next year. The question is whether, since this bill is expected to be passed this year and was in the budget, not a new measure, the net income that we are expecting, assuming we pass and it becomes law and GRA starts to enforce it, will not be new, because it's already would have been calculated by GRA and added to the revenue. It may be one of the reasons we are expecting a revenue of 100 billion, or so. So you can see the two revenue remedial measures that you spoke about, apart from the improvement in tax enforcement, which is not changing anything. Which will change much, but will take time, 2 to 3 years, because it will take you this year. The compliance element in terms of audits and the rest can be done this year. And when it comes to automating the domestic tax process in particular, it's something that is likely to take at a minimum this year. So it may not be significant very much, to the situation that is facing us. So if the markets are closed, we are still downgraded and we have to finance, and hopefully we can get 2 billion. Are we saying that the rest, 2 billion Ghana cedis, which is times, 2 billion US dollars, which let's say times 7, would give you 14 billion, yes, if I'm not mistaken. So yes, 14 billion. What of the rest? Are we looking to finance all of this from the domestic market? Is our market big? Because our domestic bonds that we issue, the bonds, are patronized by non-residents. And those non-residents have been exiting. It's in the budget, it's in Bank of Ghana's previous statements, right? So I'm afraid the measures that said that free SHS was mentioned, we know it's a no-go area. Other initiatives were not mentioned because you will see that the areas which were going to suffer cuts included the establishment of new departments and agencies, which is a surprise given our situation, right, that we would even have been contemplating that we were going to establish new departments, agencies, and the rest. Already in the budget, the government, which has split so many ministries and has already a heavy cost, we should be contracting, not increasing, let alone before we even think about, using it as a measure. If you look at the other ones, they are indicative. So they set a signal. For example, the allowances and the salaries of government appointees and the rest. You recall that in a similar situation in 2015, President Mahama did something similar, which we said was not extensive enough, right? But it's good that it is a measure that we can always, because the sacrifice must be across the board. The other solution which you read, which goes to the pockets of Ghanaians in particular, which is the cutting of, various margins. Yeah. Remember, it's hitting the private sector, because it's margins that should go to BDCs, margins that should go to OMCs, oil marketing companies, and the rest. And this sector is already suffering. You know that the energy sector, arrears has shot up. It shot up, from about 2.2 billion in 2017, which ESLA was supposed to pay, completely. You can Google the minister, vice president mentioned this in 2017. So this is a sector which has those huge arrears. Those arrears, as and when they are paid, are added to amortization and therefore are not part of the arrears, that we are talking about. The same sector is now going to make a contribution to the budget, whilst government maintains its expenditures.
What is the explanation on still we stay a little further with the fuel? What's the explanation to the fact that the finance minister actually mentioned that even though we are a net exporter of fuel and the prices on the global market goes up, it's a sham that we're not benefiting from windfall? What does that mean? That we don't? Why did he say so?
It's not a sham. We are benefiting from the windfall, but the windfall is being offset. I would use the expression offset rather than sham. The logic is simple. If we did a budget, with giving the prices and the benchmark, it's about 70. I forgot the exact amount, but let's say it's about $70 per barrel where the prices were, and now it is over 100 barrels, $100 per barrel, which is where we were, if you remember, in 2012 going into 2013, because before the prices went down, in 2015, 2016, and was attributed to non-performance. There's nothing new. You are going to get additional revenue during the period when it was high. At the time, that's when we built up the sinking fund. That's when we built up the stabilization fund, which we used to pay off part of the first sovereign bond, the last of which was paid in 2017. And then the stabilization fund, 250 million that we withdrew for COVID, actually 370 million. Much of it came from that era, the Mahama era. So that's what we did with a high price increase. And then we were able to start, the strategic stock and other policies such that that revenue, would come in, and we had stopped paying subsidy. Now these schemes have been stopped. So on the revenue side, because prices are about 100, we are going to get more now from 3 oil fields. What the minister is saying, and I hope I had it right in terms of saying sham or whatever. If I didn't get it right, you can correct me.
Yeah, he
Is
actually
that
said
yes?
he says
Is that a
the
lot
pep-
of that?
I was trying to read a sentence on what he said. He said the purported windfall gain in foreign exchange is a mirage.
Well, it's a mirage because you didn't plan. Precisely because I was looking at a scenario I was painting, and that was with one oil field, Jubilee, and we're able to build up, the put money as a result of that windfall into the stabilization fund. We're able to put money into the sinking fund. We're able to put money into the contingency fund. Those were the structures that we were putting in place in order that, we should be able to rely on them. The question is, why were we not able to do better with 3 oil fields when the prices shot up, from about $35 from 2017 to about $68, and it hit about $80? What happened? Right? So we did not prepare. We did not prepare for crisis. We did not prepare for COVID. We did not prepare such that the amount that was released, the majority of that, I'm not saying all of it, came from the Mahama era. Those were things that were being built to stabilize the economy. So you can imagine if we had 3 oil fields, we could have probably been able to withdraw about 600, 700 million US dollars at the rate we were going for COVID. But there was no preparation for it. So the thinking that you could run an economy for 4 years, erode all stabilizers from ESLA to infrastructure investment fund to 50 million US dollars, through to sinking fund, and all those funds were depleted. And today, you say it's a mirage. It's a mirage of our own creation. It's a mirage of the government's creation, because what you do is that you prepare when times are good from when times are bad.
What do you do
So
to
the
prepare?
situation facing, so let me explain now, sorry, quickly. So the situation, is talking about the first part is what I spoke about. The revenue is coming in. There's a mirage because we are now going to use that revenue, because we didn't build that buffers, to import crude oil, which we are passing on to consumers, because, the ESLA portion of the subsidy, that's the question. Where did it go? There's an ESLA portion of the subsidy. Did it all go into previous price adjustments? Right? That's what I said we were using to build a strategic stock and the rest. The additional 3 oil fields, where did the money go? Why is it that we did not increase the stabilization fund so that we could be? Do you know that we have not restored the stabilization fund? We have not removed, the cap of the stabilization fund since 2020. In fact, since 2015, when we had those crises and it were lowered, to 300, the government lowered it further to 100. And all that money is now going into consumption in a period of crisis. So we are not even preparing for the next crisis, which is inevitable. If where did that money go? And I can have an answer. The answer is that much of that ESLA revenue, we should have gone off in 2020 anyway, because it was supposed to be 3 to 5 years, but were kept. And then the ESLA levy itself was also increased twice. And then the 5 years was extended to 10 years because of the bond. All that money is now servicing that bond. And where did that bond money go? That is the question we should be asking, right? So that's the reason it has become a mirage. There's a mirage of our own policy creation.
Let me ask this question. Government was consuming. Maybe that's why these funds have all been depleted. Government has stated that we had a struggle during the COVID. Now we are faced with Russia and Ukraine. which areas I mean, it's good for government to spend. That we know that the economy is being taken care of because government is spending. But which specific areas do we think government actually spends these monies at? Because you can go to free SHS, but when you do the calculation of what free SHS we spent on it so far, it doesn't come close to what we have, spent from these sources of revenue generation.
Okay, let me take it in two parts. COVID. It is precisely because you are going to have a problem like COVID. Remember, before COVID, it was a global financial crisis. Before COVID, we have had commodity prices. Before COVID, we have had our own domestic crisis, including drought, and then the opposite flooding, energy. Remember the disruption in gas supply from Nigeria, right, which led to the one-word doomsday and all that. Those are crises. And it's because of those crises that we said, let us use part of the oil revenue to prepare. We did not, even though crude oil increased to 3 fields, and from about 70,000 barrels, which was never achieved, in the latter years because of the tariff bearing, it shot up to nearly 200,000 barrels, 190,000 barrels per day. Why didn't you prepare for all of this, right, to meet COVID? But granted that we did not prepare and COVID came, are you aware that this is the first crisis in the history of at least the Fourth Republic that we got about $5 billion US dollars? IMF, 1 billion. Right. Bank of Ghana, 1.7 billion. World Bank, recently we were told about 600 billion for COVID. China, African Development Bank, development partners. If you add all of it up, even from the government's own release, it's about 5 billion. And then on top of it, after exiting the fund and taking the COVID money from them, we also went back and took 1 billion of the SDR. Why have we not been able to resolve? We may even cross the 1 billion because there were also donations, local donations to the government. Precisely. So, and if you want to know the reality, what does 5 billion mean? 5 billion, let me just multiply by 6, no 6.5. Exchange rate, right? It's 30 billion. And GRA brings in something close to about 60 plus billion or something 50. Sorry, 50 is just below 60 billion. So that is 3/4 of what GRA brings in, which was meant to resolve one problem, COVID. It's the highest probably in Africa. All these assistance that came and giving our population and giving even what the minister said, that the impact of COVID in Ghana was less thanks to the government's performance. Why didn't we resolve it? The answer again lies in what the World Bank country director told us recently, and which some of us have been saying for some time, that we are putting too much of our problems on COVID, and that we had problems, before COVID. And that's what we were saying, that before COVID, the government's arrears alone was about 5%, of 5% of GDP. If you take the GDP at the time to be about, let me say conservatively, it's about 350, let's say 300 to make the maths, easier, or 360, million, and you divide it by 6, you're talking about 6 billion, right? Right. That is what a 5%, means. That is divided by, yes, that's what it means, right? So it's a significant amount of money. But where is it in the budget? Arrears is still being shown at, the highest has been 3-point-something billion. So what about the rest? Okay, and you will see that part of the solutions which the minister was proposing is that we're now going to go back to IFMIS or GIFMIS. You remember GIFMIS? After 2017, we stopped talking about GIFMIS. Yeah. And we were told that before you left office, what was the effectiveness of GIFMIS? GIFMIS was for expenditure what ICOMS is to revenue, customs administration. So GIFMIS, what we did with GIFMIS was to put all of government expenditure, from the budget on an electronic platform. And we actually stopped the paper processing, of requests for government payments. And so every ministry, department, and agency had to go on GIFMIS to process their payment.
Right.
And if as you process, you hit your expenditure ceilings, then it means that the estimates that was given to you is finished. And that was the sort of discipline that it was bringing, right? And then it was to move to the management of arrears and contracts in the system. And those were the elements that were stopped, just like the domestic element of ICOMS, or back then West Blue or single window, as we called it. Those were the initiatives that were to improve, the fiscal performance in terms of revenue and expenditure, so that you can have a fiscal system that is as reliable as we deem Bank of Ghana system to be reliable when we get information from them. Right.
And was it reliable? Because one of the arguments from your side you're making is that during your time you didn't borrow money from the Bank of Ghana as it's being done under this administration. So was it that effective? Was GIFMIS helping?
Yeah, GIFMIS was helping significantly, but also the sinking fund and others that we established is what, I remember it was a condition in the IMF, program, right? We were supposed to even get 5%, right? But we managed, even going into 2015, 2016,
right?
When the crude oil prices fell and commodity prices fell significantly, we still managed. And we did a budget of 6.1, which is 1.1, above, the current fiscal regulatory rules of 5%, right? So yes, GIFMIS had started to become effective. Remember, it was a new model, but it was showing the element of GIFMIS, which the minister again mentioned, which they are going to go back, is a payroll, ghost names. Ghost names were virtually eliminated. And the way we did it was simply to, again, through the payroll electronic platform, every ministry, department, and agency began to confirm the names of people on the payroll live to the controller 2 weeks before the payroll. So if anybody was on steady leave without pay, they were dropped. If anybody had retired, but the processing of paper was still ongoing, it was moved to pension and others. So because sometimes what you call ghost is because somebody has retired, paperwork is being done, and so they remain on the payroll. So we had all those initiatives. You may want to
I was
talk
going to
controller.
ask if it went a long way to eliminate ghost names, and what percentage of ghost names were you able to eliminate from the payroll, which government, finance minister obviously yesterday stated that it was having to deal with it and expecting that by end of year.
Well, it was quite significant at the time, I can say, but I don't recall that we quantified it because it was a new system. So I don't want to exaggerate that it eliminated it completely. That's why I used the word advisedly, that it went a long way, to start, but I would say probably confidently that up to 60-70% of those names were eliminated, which is a major milestone, if not more, that should have, been continued. And so the point I'm making is that, it's gratifying to know that we are going back to some of these measures, and hopefully we can go back to the building of buffers like the stabilization fund, the sinking fund, and the rest. Look, as we sit here, apart from the problems that we are talking about, which government must confront, we are supposed to be paying $550 million US dollars come 2025. The same condition that led us to set up the sinking fund and put scarce oil revenue into it, because back then, the first sovereign bond issued by His Excellency during His Excellency Kufuor's regime was due 2007 to 2017, right? And so we have said, even as a government, if you were to win the 2017 budget, that payment will be facing you $750 million US dollars. So we refinanced $250 million from the 2015 bond. You remember the one that is criticized as the most expensive? We use it to refinance and to push it out 10 years. And then we paid we paid down using our own oil revenue, despite the difficulties, doing so and everything, $550 million US. In fact, 200 million of that amount was used by the NPP to pay the balance of the bond on October 4th, 2017. Yes, it was never mentioned in the budget or anything. So Ghanaians have never known that their effort, did this achievement. And that's the reason, one of the reasons, as you said, we're able to, somehow manage despite the difficulties without, without going to Bank of Ghana as was required, for even a 5%, of deficit, which was permitted. But the point we are making, 5% of previous year's revenue to help. But the point we are making now is, with all those buffers and others gone, right, you can see from what I'm saying that we have a huge deficit that has to be financed. The markets are close to us as we speak now. Hopefully, these measures, but it's a question of whether these measures, that's the point I want to make. It's a question of whether these measures will be sufficient, for the ratings agencies, whether they will be sufficient for the equity funds and others, to start giving money to Ghana. And it's a tall order, to satisfy, because we were not able to go to the market, we were not able to convince them going to the end of last year. What is the implication? The implication is that if you can't go to the external market, then you are going to turn and borrow domestic without non-residents or with some non-residents. And the effect we all know, that's what we call in economics crowding. It means that, government is going to take a lot of the credit that's available for the whole economy. And that means part of the credit that used to go to private sector, the enabler for growth, right? And then government, by the pressure it's putting on the markets, will increase the demand, for loanable funds, and interest rates will go up. And that's why you saw Bank of Ghana quickly, increase the base rate or the policy rate, to 17%.
We're having a discussion with former Finance Minister Seth Terkper. It's time for us to take a quick break. We'll be back shortly to continue. Question the numbers that were provided also in the area of the banking sector cleanup, which yesterday the Finance Minister stated that we spent 25 billion in cleaning the sector. Welcome back to Good Afternoon, Ghana. We're interacting with the former Finance Minister, Seth Terkper, on a presentation by the Finance Minister yesterday on some of the measures that he has taken, whether these measures are actually very significant and what we could have done better or what we should do better going forward. Mr. Seth Terkper, can you hear me? Are you still there?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. So let's go back to the policy rate of the 17% from the Bank of Ghana. The Bank of Ghana also went ahead to encourage the banks that they could increase, work according to that and increase their interest rate. But if the government would have to rely on local, the borrowing market for now, what economic impact will it give even to the government itself?
Well, that's where we ended our discussion. So to go back, it means that government is in the market big time because government is not able to borrow, externally. It will have three effects. I mentioned two immediately. First, because government is in the market, government will start taking more of loanable funds or credit, as we talk it, and more of that, that is the total savings that all of us Ghanaians have put in the banking sector, which the bank is sometimes invests on our behalf. When you buy a treasury bill, that's what it means. When you buy a bond, that's what it means. It means that government is going to take more of that. And because of the pressure that is being put by government, the interest rate, that's the second effect, interest rates will go up. And that means that the private sector, which is in deprived of credit, the little they can get, they have to pay more by way of interest rate. The other effect is that because government is not able to go into the bond markets, remember when the government goes to the bond market, at a minimum, the portion of the bond money that goes into the budget, not the one that is used to refinance, because the one that is used to refinance, existing debt will go out again as forex. But the one that is used as a budget support brings in forex to finance other government expenditure or to pay contractors, suppliers, not wages and the rest, which can be paid in cities. So again, you see the effect, of that. So if you don't go to the budget, it means that there will be less forex, and that means that Bank of Ghana will have less forex, and pressure will be on the current, reserves. Imports are rising, and they are rising and being passing on at higher interest rates. So the currency will give it, and the currency, the depreciation of the cedi, could continue. So
Do you support the proposal for banks to be allowed to import their own forex, which I think I understand during Kufuor's time, he allowed the banks to do that. Is it a good economic measure?
I don't know what exactly that meant. It's something that continues. For example, if it means that the banks, they are holding cedis, and if government cannot give them the cedis, what we are saying is that they must go to the international foreign exchange market to buy, to buy forex to meet their forex demands from their customers. Of course, there is pressure internationally already.
Right.
Remember, global interest rates are going up. The dollar itself is strengthens and then weakens depending on whether gold and others situation in Ukraine and others which you mentioned. So I don't see the extent to which that will alleviate our problems. They may be able to get it. On the other hand, what I also heard the minister say is the retention, management of the retention. That is, those who earn forex in Ghana, there could be some management. We started some of that, where through persuasion, the Bank of Ghana and Ministry of Finance could, persuade them to spend some of that money locally instead of taking everything out, because it's their money, but probably there are city budgets in terms of the things that they buy in cities, payments of city wages, buying of local stationery and the rest in cities. So they could then exchange this for cedis at the central bank instead of taking it out. So yes, those are measures which, are done, continuously. And so I don't think that we are talking about, anything new. Right? The important thing is for us to be able to generate our own resources without forex, without depending on the loan, which is, as we can see, once you are not able to, to do a bond, or you do it at a high interest rate, you are bringing in high interest costs, into the country. And what was the solution? Our solution was the Exim Bank, which was to look outward, to help, non-cocoa, sector of the, similar to what Cocoa Board does for industry, and for other farmers like cashew. And that was the goal of setting up the Exim Bank, so that they could provide export credit and export guarantee, and that is more sustainable. Yes, those are some of the measures, but I'm afraid going back again to the statement, you can see, that some of the measures that are announced, have their own difficulties already.
Let me take you to, I have a few minutes, but let me take you to the the banking sector cleanup. I think we started facing some challenges before COVID with that particular action taken by government. From the beginning, we were told that we're using about 9 billion, and then all of a sudden it's catapulted to 20 billion. Yesterday, the finance minister mentioned that we used 25 billion in the sector to protect savings of 4.6 million. What economic sense does it make?
And the question is, why has that become even a problem? Right? I'm asking that question because part of the reason for ESLA was to pay these amounts precisely. And in 2016, when the first ESLA flow started coming in, Remember in 2015 was when we did ESLA, late 2015. By March of 2016, when the revenue started flowing in, we started paying off those banking sector debts. And how was it done? We started with VRA. VRA had gone to the banks to borrow, to buy crude, during the period of doom song, right? And because subsidy was very difficult to come by. And you remember that we met the banks. We paid 500 million Ghana cedis, approximately, of ESLA money that are coming to the banks. And then we added up VRA's total, amount that it was owing to all the banks, and it was about 2.2 billion. And we went to the agreement and we said, wait a minute, we are going to use ESLA to pay you over a period of 3 to 5 years. So government took over that debt, and VRA was to therefore pay government over time, which was to help, the private sector participation, ECG and others in the energy sector. Okay, that money which VRA was paying in dollars. So we did a successful payment, first payment. We handed over a term sheet of 600 million, which was to pay US dollars, the IPPs and others from ESLA as phase 2.
Right.
In January, the government itself said that it had enough money to pay, the energy sector debt for private sector and for the public sector from ESLA. From ESLA. And remember, the current administration minister even got a prize for ESLA, for the way ESLA was, well, you can Google, was fashioned, to resolve these prices. Now, instead of continuing with the cash flow, the second element of ESLA is the enhanced road levy. And something similar was started for the contractors, 1 billion, because that's in cities. We did that also in local banks, through a bid. And the payment started, So we were confident that within 3 to 5 years, given the flow of ESLA, this problem will be resolved. The government came, this is what you call the gradualist approach, where you take the amount that is owing, like what VRA was owing, and put it in what you call a bad bank, right? So that you can use the ESLA to pay, over time. Government came and changed the policy to a big bang approach, decided, that some of the banks were weak, because once you paid, the non-performing loans from the energy sector in particular, which was the one that was depressed, if you remember, because of doom song, it means that the banks will therefore have the money, to be able to pay the debt. And what we did was we brought the contractors and suppliers, including VRA, to the table. And we said that since you went to the bank to borrow, and that is why, government had to do ESLA, we are not giving the money to you directly. We are going to give the money to repay the debt which you owe the banks. And they accepted. And that was the agreement. Now, fast forward. ESLA has brought in approximately the amount that the minister is talking about, right? Today. And ESLA is supposed to be bringing in 43 billion Ghana cedis by 2025. So why has this become a problem? Why is the other side of the story not being told, right? And that is because we decided to take a loan upfront. Fine. If we took an ESLA loan upfront, why didn't we use the loan to liquidate, the non-performing loans immediately? Where did that money go? That's the question. And then, so we used that ESLA loan, I don't know where, because there has never been any specific reporting in the ESLA report, but the revenue is being reported, fully for us to understand. And we used the ESLA loan, and the loan has added to the arrears because, the suppliers and others who borrow from the banks, have not paid. So when I hear the government patting itself on the shoulder, about how it has done well with, paying a liability which it created, and not mentioning ESLA, I just scratch my head, and so let's have the full story. That's what I often say, let's be candid.
Right.
What happened to the ESLA revenues, yes.
Right.
And we spoke about the ESLA portion. We just spoke about the ESLA portion. We should have been paying subsidies. Where did that money go? And how come it's the private sector that is now billing our government by the reduction of margins? What happened to that subsidy, which we had used to set up the strategic stock and started using to pay subsidy? Where did it go? Government is still collecting it.
Mr. Seth Terkper, we'll leave it here. This is what time will allow us, but we will engage you again because there are more issues. We're looking at how going forward 2024, 2025, now that we're taking loans at zero coupons, I don't know how that will affect us in a few 3-4 years to come. So we will definitely engage you here, but we'll leave the interview here and then we'll get back to you.
Let me just, thank you very much. But let me add quickly that remember the minister is going to do the mid-year review, and that will be a good time, which is now mandatory under the PFMA, Public Financial Management Act. So that will be another good opportunity for us to see a bit more specifics in terms of the measures.
Great. That will be interesting. Okay, thank you for reminding us on that one. Yes. So I think we're expecting that maybe next week, and we'll bring you some more details on what happens. But let me take a message that's been thrown on my video wall. It says that Aaron Babako Kokomisa. It says that I think we don't have appropriate government machinery. That solely duty is to check into government spending patterns, not including parliamentarians and ministers of state. I'm saying this because during the lockdown era, some members of parliament took it upon themselves and were sharing food items and other stuff, which I think they have to account for. Secondly, the sharing of food items were badly organized. On the issue of government spending, I think the government has to reduce the ministerial appointment and stop cheating the new constituency, stop creating new constituencies, stop dividing electoral areas. For now, this will help a long way to bring back the economy it's on its right track. And well, it's interesting that we didn't hear anything about cutting down the number of ministers, but rather had cutting down of what's it called, salaries. Anyway, let me just remind you that News Night today will not be at 7 p.m. It will come at 6 p.m. and end at 6:30 because the Black Stars will have to make us proud tonight. The match is starting at 7 and the sports team will be here to, start warming us up into the game. So don't miss it. News Night 6:30 to 6 to 6:30, and then sports team will take over 6:30 to 7 when the match will start. We wish the Black Stars all the best. My name is Annie F1 Pofo.